neurological disease that prevented him from fasting last year, and it broke it. And he called and said, doctors, they told me they can give me some extended release medicine so that I'll be able to fast. And he's excited about sacrifice. This month that's upon us is one with so many blessings and so many names. Now when you go on the internet or you go on YouTube, these algorithms, they start giving you lectures and lecture titles. You start hearing about, or listening to footballs from the past. You hear them saying, Ramadan, the month of mercy. Ramadan, the month of redemption. Ramadan, the month of evolution. Ramadan, the month of reformation. Ramadan, the month of drawing near to Allah. Ramadan, the month where we have love for, we restore, claim our love for God, for Quran, and love for Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ramadan is all of that. We get excited about worship. And it is also the month of pleading to Allah. It's the time, if you've been negligent, if you've been tricked, if you've been deceived, so that you don't turn to Allah and you don't raise your hands and you don't ask God for anything, now for sure is the time that you start to beg Allah. There's so many opportunities for us to turn to Allah, and the du'as are mustajab, that they're going to be answered, that Allah is going to answer them. And we miss opportunities. I often remind, especially in ta'aleem settings, I remind of watching some of our brothers who's, Sheikh Ahmed, who used to come from Mauritania. It was a strange thing watching him when the muezzin was called the adhan for Maghrib. And everybody would do the ritualistic dua, oh Allah, I have fast for you, I break my fast with the sun, sit down, eat something, and get to the food line. And he would stand there for an extended period of time, raising his hands and talking to his Lord. Why? Because that's one of those times that dua is destined to be answered. It's an accepted time. It's a time when you ask your God for something, your Lord for something, He's going to give it to you. Ask Him. So Allah says in the Quran, He says, and so when my servant asks of me, tell him I'm close to him. Tell him I'm near. Maududi, when he talks about this in his commentary of Quran, he reminds that, this is so important because it helps us to reorientate our minds in thinking, because we think there's somebody else that we need to be asking stuff from. And that's why people are afraid and people are terrified, because of the president and his minions, they're saying we're going to cut off some stuff. But they're not the owners of it anyway. The treasure belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're worried about somebody cutting off something or denying you something. How can they do that? What power and authority do they have? Allah says, when my servant, when he asked me, he didn't just say, when my servant asked me, tell him I'm going to answer. He said, tell him I'm near. In another place in Quran, in Surah Qaf, Allah says that Allah is closer to you than your life vein. Sometimes when you want to make dua, when you got something troubling you got some heartache, you got some pain, you got some challenges, maybe it's with your children, maybe it's with the job, maybe it's with brothers and sisters. Sometimes, before you can even articulate or verbalize the dua, God has already answered it. That's Qareeb. Qareeb is like, it's a close relative. It's the one that's close to you. Allah says, when my servant asks me for something, don't tell him I'm far away. Don't tell him to get in line. Don't tell him to wait. Don't tell her to wait. Tell them I am near. But now, because I'm near, tell him that he should also respond to me when I call upon him, when I call him. What does Allah call us to? Ibadah. Sadaqah. Zakat. What does he call you to? Tell him to respond to me. When I tell him prayer is upon you, respond to me. When I tell him fasting is upon you, respond to me. When I tell him zakat is upon you, respond to me. When I tell him sadaqah is good for you, now respond. This is the time for asking and the time for responding. Asking Allah for what you want, responding to Allah. And that's why Allah, He mentions in the Hadith Qudsi, what does He say? He says, it's worded like this: I want and my servant wants. If my servant surrenders to what I want, I'll give him what he wants. If he just surrenders to what I want, I'll give him what he wants. Allah says, pray. He says, fast. He says, give zakat. He says, if he will surrender to what I want, I'll give him what he wants. But if he does not, then I'll make him exhausted going after what he wants.